He was supposed to watch. So why did the enemy target him? Kim Taemin stared at the screen in front of him, watching 3 green dots move across the star map. Each dot represented a Vren warship, massive vessels that could destroy a city with a single blast. He had been watching these ships for 8 months now, tracking their movements from his underground bunker on Threshold 7. The planet was cold and empty. Nothing lived here except some hardy plants and a few insects. That made it perfect for his job. No one to bother him. No one to get in the way. Just him, his equipment, and the endless task of watching the enemy. Taemin typed a few notes into his report. The Vren ships were following their usual patrol pattern. Nothing special, nothing different. He would send this report to Coalition Command later, just like he did every day. He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. Being an observer was boring work. Some people thought it was glamorous, sitting on the edge of enemy territory, gathering intelligence. But most days, it was just endless hours of staring at screens, writing down coordinates, and eating freeze-dried meals. "Arya, any changes in their formation?" Taemin asked. The AI's voice came through the speakers, calm and pleasant. "No changes detected, Specialist Kim. All vessels maintaining standard search patterns." Taemin nodded. The Vren had been searching for something in this sector for weeks now. He didn't know what. That wasn't his job. His job was simple: watch and report. Let the smart people back at headquarters figure out what it all meant. He stood up and stretched. His small bunker had everything he needed to survive, but not much else. A bed, a small kitchen, a bathroom, and this control room filled with scanning equipment. The walls were bare metal and the air always smelled slightly recycled. He had been alone here for so long that he sometimes talked to Arya as if she were real, not just a program. "Time for the weekly check-in," Arya reminded him. Taemin sat back down and opened the communication channel. A moment later, Commander Park Ji-ho's face appeared on the screen. The older man looked tired, but he smiled when he saw Taemin. "How are you holding up out there?" Park asked. "Same as always, sir. Quiet. The Vren are still running their search patterns. I think they're looking for old mining facilities in the asteroid belt." Park nodded. "Your reports have been very helpful. Keep up the good work. Only 4 more months until your rotation ends." 4 months, Taemin repeated. It felt like forever. They talked for a few more minutes about routine matters, then ended the call. Taemin prepared his daily report, attached it to a secure transmission, and sent it off. Another day done. But then something changed. Arya's voice took on a different tone. "Specialist Kim, I'm detecting unusual movement. 3 Vren vessels are breaking formation." Taemin sat up straight, his attention locked on the screen. The 3 green dots were moving away from their patrol route. They were heading toward Threshold 7, toward him. "Maybe they detected something in this sector," he muttered. "Arya, check our stealth systems." "All stealth systems functioning normally. Our energy signature is minimal. Detection probability remains less than 1%. The ships kept coming. Taemin felt a small twist of worry in his stomach. This wasn't normal. The Vren never deviated from their patrols without reason. Then his communication system exploded with noise. Multiple frequencies, all broadcasting the same message in broken galactic common. Taemin listened in disbelief. "Human observer. Human Kim Taemin. You will surrender yourself. We know you are here. Surrender, and your death will be quick." Taemin's blood went cold. They knew his name. They were calling for him specifically. How? Why? "Arya, emergency transmission to Commander Park. Priority Alpha." The AI worked quickly. Within seconds, Park's face appeared on the screen again, this time looking alarmed. "Sir, I have a situation. The Vren are demanding I surrender. They know my name." Park's expression shifted from confusion to concern. "That's impossible. Your location is classified. Even most coalition personnel don't know where you are. They're broadcasting it on all channels. 3 warships are heading directly for my position." Park was silent for a moment, thinking. "Pack your emergency supplies. Prepare to evacuate. I'm sending reinforcements, but they won't arrive for at least 72 hours. You need to survive until then." "Sir, I don't understand. I'm just an observer. Why would they target me specifically?" "I don't know, Specialist, but we'll figure it out. Right now, focus on staying alive." The transmission ended. Taemin sat frozen for a moment, trying to process what was happening. Then Arya's voice cut through his thoughts. "The Vren vessels are entering orbital approach. Recommend immediate evacuation." That got him moving. Taemin grabbed his emergency pack and started filling it with supplies: food, water, medical kit, environmental suit, and most importantly, his backup data storage containing all his observation logs. The bunker shook. The Vren had started bombardment of the surrounding area. They were trying to force him out. "Arya, can you maintain the base's defenses?" "For approximately 6 hours. After that, structural integrity will fail." "Good. That gives me time to get clear." Taemin sealed his pack and headed for the emergency exit tunnel. It led 3 kilometers away from the base, emerging in a rocky canyon. From there, he would be on foot, alone on a frozen world, hunted by an enemy that somehow knew exactly who he was. As he entered the tunnel, Taemin looked back at his control room one last time. 8 months he had spent here, doing his job, bothering no one. He had watched the enemy, recorded their movements, sent his reports. He was supposed to be invisible. So why did they know his name? Why were they coming for him? The bunker shook again, harder this time. Taemin sealed the tunnel door behind him and started running. He didn't have answers to his questions. All he knew was that he had become the target, and the hunters were closing in. The observer was now the observed, and somewhere above him, enemy warships were preparing to tear this world apart just to find him. He was supposed to watch. So why did the enemy target him? The tunnel was dark and cold. Taemin's breath formed white clouds in the freezing air as he ran. His footsteps echoed off the metal walls, and somewhere far behind him he could hear the dull thud of explosions. The Vren were tearing apart his base, looking for him. 3 kilometers. That was the distance to the surface exit. Taemin had practiced this evacuation route every month, but he never thought he would actually use it. His legs burned as he ran, his pack heavy on his back. Finally, he reached the exit door. He pressed his hand against the scanner, and the door slid open. Cold wind hit his face like a slap. Threshold 7 was always cold, with temperatures that could freeze exposed skin in minutes. Taemin pulled on his thermal gear and looked out at the landscape. Frozen tundra stretched in every direction, broken only by forests of strange crystal trees that reflected the pale blue light of the distant sun. Beautiful, but deadly. This world would kill him as surely as the Vren if he made mistakes. Taemin activated his portable scanner. It showed dozens of heat signatures in the sky. Vren dropships deploying ground troops. They were spreading out in a search pattern, methodical and efficient. He had maybe an hour before they reached this area. He started moving, heading toward a crystal forest 5 kilometers away. The trees would interfere with their thermal scanners, giving him some cover. His training kicked in, all those survival courses he had taken back on Earth. Move quickly but carefully. Leave no obvious trail. Use the terrain. Behind him, a massive explosion lit up the sky. His base was gone. 8 months of his life destroyed in seconds. Focus, he whispered to himself. Survive first. Understand later. The crystal forest was eerie. The trees weren't really trees, more like mineral formations that grew in tree-like shapes. They hummed softly when the wind passed through them, creating strange music. Taemin moved between them carefully, checking his scanner every few minutes. The Vren were getting closer. He could see their search pattern tightening like a net. They were good at this. Too good. As night fell, the temperature dropped even further. Taemin found a small cave formed by overlapping crystal formations and took shelter. He couldn't risk a fire, so he wrapped himself in thermal blankets and ate cold rations. His hands shook slightly, not from cold, but from adrenaline and fear. He pulled out his personal communicator and tried to reach Commander Park again. The signal was weak, broken by interference, but it connected. "Sir, I've evacuated the base. Current position is—" "Don't transmit your position," Park interrupted. "They might intercept it. Just tell me you're safe for now." "For now, yes, but I need to understand what's happening. Why are they after me specifically?" Park's face on the small screen looked grim. "We're investigating. Analyst Yoon Da-un is going through all your reports looking for patterns. So far, we have nothing. You haven't done anything unusual. You're just an observer like 100 others." "Then why do they know my name?" "We don't know. But Taemin, listen carefully. Whatever the reason, you've become valuable to us and dangerous to them. Coalition reinforcements are coming, but you need to stay alive for 72 hours. Can you do that?" Taemin looked at his scanner. The Vren were less than 2 kilometers away now. "I'll try, sir." "Good. Stay smart. Stay hidden. We'll get you out." The transmission ended. Taemin sat in the darkness, listening to the wind sing through the crystal trees. 72 hours. 3 days. It seemed impossible. He must have dozed off because he woke suddenly to the sound of footsteps crunching on frost. His scanner showed 4 heat signatures very close. A Vren patrol had found his cave. Taemin grabbed his pack and moved deeper into the cave, hoping it had another exit. It didn't. He was trapped. The Vren entered the cave, their large forms silhouetted against the starlight outside. They spoke in their harsh language, scanning the area with handheld devices. Taemin pressed himself against the cave wall, barely breathing. One of them pointed directly at him. They had found him. What happened next was instinct and desperation. Taemin had basic combat training. All Coalition personnel did. But he had never actually fought anyone. Now he had no choice. He triggered a small explosive charge from his emergency kit, tossing it at the cave entrance. The Vren scattered, and in that moment of confusion, Taemin ran. But he didn't run away. He ran toward them. The first Vren was still off balance from the explosion. Taemin hit him low, using the alien's own weight against him. They fell together, and Taemin grabbed the Vren's weapon, a heavy energy rifle. He had never fired one before. He pulled the trigger anyway. The rifle kicked hard, nearly knocking him down, but the shot hit the second Vren in the chest, and the alien fell. The other 2 were recovering now, raising their weapons. Taemin dove behind a crystal formation just as energy blasts shattered the air where he had been standing. His mind raced. He couldn't win a straight fight, but he knew this terrain better than they did. He had spent 8 months studying the geological surveys of this area. Taemin fired at the crystal formation above the Vren. The structure was unstable, he remembered from the reports. The energy blast hit the crystals, and they shattered, falling like glass daggers. One of the Vren went down, caught under the cascade. The last one charged at him, roaring in anger. Taemin waited until the alien was close, then triggered another explosive, throwing it between them. The blast knocked them both down. When Taemin's vision cleared, the Vren was trying to get up. Taemin grabbed a sharp piece of crystal and, in a moment of pure survival instinct, drove it into the alien's throat. Then it was over. Silence except for his own ragged breathing. Taemin stood shakily, looking at what he had done. 4 Vren soldiers, dead. He felt sick, but there was no time for that emotion. He searched their bodies quickly. That's when he found it. Each Vren carried a data pad, and on each pad was his photograph. Below the image was text in Galactic Common. Primary target, Kim Tae-min, bounty, 10 million credits. 10 million credits. That was more money than most people would see in their entire lives. Someone really wanted him dead or captured. But why? Tae-min took one of the data pads and stuffed it in his pack. He left the cave and moved deeper into the crystal forest, putting distance between himself and the bodies. The Vren would find their dead patrol soon, and then the hunt would intensify. As he walked through the frozen night, Tae-min realized something important. He wasn't just running anymore. He was learning. He was watching his hunters the same way he had watched their fleets, studying their tactics, understanding their patterns. If he was going to survive 72 hours, he would need to become more than an observer. He would need to become something else entirely. Above him, more dropships streaked across the sky, carrying more hunters. Tae-min adjusted his pack and kept moving. The game had changed, and now he was playing for his life. He was supposed to watch, so why did the enemy target him? Back at Coalition Command, Yoon Da-yoon had not slept in 36 hours. Her desk was covered with data screens, each one showing different aspects of Kim Tae-min's observation reports from the past 8 months. She had gone through hundreds of reports, thousands of data points, looking for anything unusual. At first, she found nothing. Tae-min's reports were professional and thorough. He recorded ship movements, energy signatures, communication patterns, standard observer work. Nothing that would make him special or worth targeting. But then she noticed something in the side notes. Every report included a section called Analyst Comments, where Tae-min added his personal observations. Most observers left this section blank or wrote generic statements. Tae-min filled it with predictions. Based on current formation, fleet will likely redirect to Sector 7 within 48 hours. Communication patterns suggest supply shortage. Expect resupply convoy from home system within 1 week. Unusual officer traffic between ships indicates possible command dispute. Watch for tactical changes. Da-eun sat up straighter. These weren't just observations. These were predictions. And she had seen these patterns before in the strategic intelligence reports that went to coalition commanders. She pulled up the tactical analysis files and started cross-referencing. Her hands moved quickly across the controls as data flowed across her screens. Then she saw it. The pattern. Every time Tae-min predicted a fleet movement, he was right. Not sometimes. Not usually. Every single time. When he said the Vren would move to a certain sector, they did. When he predicted a supply convoy, it arrived exactly when he said it would. Da-eun checked the numbers. Over 8 months of reports, Tae-min had made 147 predictions. 139 of them had been completely accurate. That was a 94% success rate. She called Commander Park immediately. "Sir, I found something." Park appeared on her screen, looking hopeful. "What is it?" "It's his predictions, sir. Specialist Kim has been making tactical predictions in his reports, and they're incredibly accurate. The Coalition has been using his intelligence to counter Vren operations. Every convoy we intercepted, every defensive position we reinforced, every ambush we avoided, a significant portion of that success came from his predictions." Park frowned. "But dozens of observers send us similar information. Why single him out?" "Because the others just report facts, sir. They tell us what is happening. Specialist Kim tells us what will happen, and he's right almost every time. The Vren must have noticed that one specific observation post's intelligence was destroying their operations. They traced it back to him." "Yes, sir. They don't know how he does it. They just know that he's dangerous to them. Dangerous enough to send 3 warships and ground forces just to eliminate him." Park leaned back, processing this information. "So we've been winning small victories because one human observer can predict enemy movements better than our entire intelligence analysis division." "It appears so, sir." "How does he do it?" Da-eun pulled up psychological profiles. "I've been researching that. Human cognitive patterns are different from most coalition species. We don't just process data. We look for stories, causes, and effects. We try to understand motivations. Specialist Kim isn't calculating probabilities like a computer. He's understanding the Vren commanders like they're characters in a story. Park nodded slowly. He thinks like a human, and that makes him unpredictable to the enemy. Yes, sir. And now they want him dead before he can do more damage. Meanwhile, on Threshold 7, Tae-min was learning to survive. He had been on the run for 4 days now, constantly moving, always staying ahead of the Vren search parties. He was exhausted, running low on supplies, and nursing a dozen small injuries. But he was also learning things about his hunters. During his second night in the Crystal Forests, Tae-min had stolen a Vren communication device. He couldn't understand their language perfectly, but he recognized patterns in their tactical chatter. They communicated in predictable ways, standard military protocols. He started mapping their search patterns, just like he had mapped their fleet movements. He realized they divided into teams of 4, each team responsible for a sector. They reported their positions every hour. They moved in straight lines, efficient but predictable. Tae-min started using this knowledge. He would monitor their communications and position himself in the gaps between search teams. When they tightened their search pattern, he would slip through holes in their formation. It was working. He was still alive. On his 5th day, his communicator crackled with Commander Park's voice. Tae-min, we know why they're hunting you. Tae-min had found shelter in an abandoned mining station. He sat down heavily, relieved to hear a friendly voice. Tell me, sir. Park explained what Da-yun had discovered. Tae-min listened in growing disbelief. You're telling me I predicted their movements? Sir, I was just guessing. I wrote down my thoughts because the report seemed incomplete without them. You weren't guessing, Specialist. You were reading patterns that others couldn't see. You were understanding the enemy's psychology. And you were right 94% of the time. Tae-min looked at his stolen data pad, still showing his bounty. 10 million credits suddenly made sense. He wasn't valuable because of what he knew. He was valuable because of how he thought. Sir, what do I do now? Keep surviving. But Tae-min, I'm authorizing a mission change. You're already behind enemy lines. You have their equipment. You understand how they think. I need you to keep observing them. Watch their ground operations. Tell us how they fight. You want me to keep doing my job while they're actively trying to kill me. I know it's dangerous, but you've proven you can predict them. That's too valuable to waste. Coalition reinforcements arrive in 48 hours. Until then, you're our eyes on the ground. Tae-min wanted to refuse. He was tired, scared, and hurt. But Park was right. He was already here. He already knew what the Vren were doing. And if his observations could help the coalition, could save lives, then he had a responsibility to continue. Understood, sir. I'll observe and report. After Park signed off, Tae-min looked at his stolen equipment and data. He reviewed his mental notes about the Vren search patterns. Then he did something that felt natural to him. He started predicting. If the Vren maintained their current search pattern, they would expand their perimeter tomorrow morning. That would leave certain areas less defended. If he moved now, he could position himself to observe their command post without being detected. It was risky, but it was also an opportunity. Tae-min packed his gear and prepared to move. He was done running. He had spent 8 months watching the enemy from a safe distance. Now he would watch them up close. As he left the mining station, Tae-min realized something important. The Vren had made a mistake when they targeted him. They thought eliminating one observer would solve their problem, but instead, they had focused that observer's attention entirely on them. They were teaching him to hunt them. Even as they hunted him, and humans, Tae-min was beginning to understand, were very good at learning. He was supposed to watch, so why did the enemy target him? Taemin found the perfect observation post in the ruins of an ancient facility, half buried in ice and rock. From this position, he could see the Vren command base 3 kilometers away. They had set up in a valley, protected on 3 sides by mountains. Smart positioning, but it also made them predictable. He spent the next day watching them through his scanner, taking careful notes. Not about where they were, but about how they operated. He observed their routine, their shift changes, their communication protocols. He watched how officers moved between buildings, how supply vehicles arrived and departed. Most importantly, he watched Captain Veltarix, the Vren commander. The alien was easy to identify because other soldiers always made way for him. Veltarix inspected his troops regularly, always at the same time each day. He was disciplined, professional, and completely predictable. Taemin started building a profile. Veltarix was a career officer, probably promoted through competence rather than politics. He followed military doctrine strictly. When presented with a tactical problem, he would always choose the textbook solution. That was his weakness. On the 6th day, Taemin contacted Commander Park with a new report. But this report was different from all his previous ones. This wasn't just observation. This was analysis of Vren ground combat doctrine. They use a 4-tier command structure, Taemin explained. Officers communicate through secure channels, but enlisted soldiers use standard tactical frequencies. They're vulnerable to electronic warfare. Also, they rely heavily on thermal scanning, but they're not adapting to this environment. The crystal formations interfere with their sensors, but they keep using the same equipment. Daeun's voice joined the call. This is incredibly detailed intelligence. How are you getting this information? I'm watching them the same way I watch their fleets, looking for patterns, understanding their thinking. Can you predict what they'll do next? She asked. Taemin looked at his notes. Yes. Captain Veltarix is frustrated. He's committed significant resources to finding me, but he's failing. His superiors are probably demanding results. He'll escalate soon. My guess is he'll commit all his ground forces to one final, massive sweep of this entire region. When? Park asked. Within the next 24 hours. He's running out of time and patience. Park and Daeun exchanged looks. If you're right, that creates an opportunity. If all his ground forces are deployed, his command base will be minimally defended. And his ships in orbit will be vulnerable, Daeun added. They've been dropping troops constantly. They must be running on skeleton crews. Park nodded slowly. Taemin, I need you to do something very dangerous. I need you to make Veltarix commit everything to finding you. Draw out his forces. Give us a target. Taemin understood immediately. You want me to be bait? The coalition fleet is arriving in 30 hours. If we can catch the Vren ships unprepared, we can win this engagement. But we need their ground forces deployed and distracted. How do I do that? Daeun spoke up. Let them find you. Not actually find you, but make them think they're close. Lead them somewhere specific. Somewhere that will require all their resources to assault. Taemin thought about the terrain. Then he remembered a location from the geological surveys. There's a box canyon about 15 kilometers from here. Steep walls, limited access. If they think I'm trapped there, Veltarix will commit everything to the assault. Can you make them believe you're there? Park asked. Yes. I can use their own communication devices to transmit false signals. Make it look like I'm trying to hide my presence but failing. They'll think they've finally cornered me. Do it. But Taemin, once they commit to the assault, you need to be somewhere safe. Somewhere you can observe but not be caught. I know a place. There's a ridge overlooking the canyon. I can watch from there. Good. When you see them commit their forces, send us everything. Troop positions, communication frequencies, tactical responses, everything. Yes, sir. The plan was insane and dangerous, but it was also their best chance. Taemin spent the next hours preparing. He moved to a position near the box canyon and began transmitting carefully crafted signals. Not too obvious, but not too subtle either. He made it look like he was setting up a defensive position, trying to hide his energy signature but not quite succeeding. The Vren picked up the signals within hours. Taimin listened to their communications spike with excitement. They thought they had him. Veltarix personally took command of the operation. Through his stolen equipment, Taimin heard the captain's orders. Every squad, every vehicle, every available soldier, all moving toward the box canyon. It was working. Taimin quickly relocated to his observation post on the ridge. From here, he could see everything. The canyon below, the approaching Vren forces, and in the distance, their command base being stripped of personnel. The Vren assault began at dawn. Hundreds of soldiers, dozens of vehicles, all converging on the canyon. They set up positions, established firing lines, prepared for a final confrontation. But there was no one in the canyon. Just some equipment Taimin had left behind to maintain the illusion. Taimin didn't watch the confusion that followed. He was too busy recording everything: troop formations, communication protocols, response times, leadership patterns. He documented how they organized an assault, how officers commanded their units, where their weaknesses were. All of this data flowed back to Coalition Command in real time. Dayun and her team received the most detailed analysis of Vren ground tactics they had ever seen. Then Commander Park's voice came through, urgent and excited. Taimin, Coalition fleet just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They're engaging the Vren ships now. Your intelligence was perfect. The enemy ships were completely unprepared. Taimin allowed himself a small smile. Below him, Veltarix was screaming orders at his confused troops. The captain had been outsmarted by the human he was hunting. The battle in orbit was brief. Coalition ships, informed by Taimin's intelligence about Vren weak points and tactical doctrine, achieved a decisive victory. 2 Vren warships were destroyed. The third tried to escape, but was disabled. On the ground, Veltarix received the news of his fleet's destruction. Taimin watched through his scanner as the Vren captain stood alone, staring at the sky. Then Veltarix did something unexpected. He ordered all forces to converge on Taimin's actual position. The captain had figured out where the human was observing from. "This is personal now," Taimin muttered. He grabbed his gear and started moving. Coalition forces were landing, but they were still minutes away. Veltarix and his remaining soldiers were closer. The hunt wasn't over, but now, at least, help was coming. Taimin ran through the crystal forest one more time. Vren forces closing in from all sides. He was out of tricks, out of energy, nearly out of time. But he had accomplished his mission. He had watched, he had learned, and he had turned the enemy's hunt against them. Now he just needed to survive a few more minutes. He was supposed to watch. So why did the enemy target him? Taimin's legs burned as he ran. Behind him, he could hear the Vren forces crashing through the crystal forest. They were no longer being careful or tactical. This was a final, desperate pursuit. His scanner showed Coalition dropships approaching, but they were still 2 kilometers away. The Vren were much closer. Too close. A tree exploded next to him, shattered by an energy blast. Taimin dove behind a rock formation and returned fire with his stolen weapon. He wasn't trying to hit anything, just slow them down for a few more seconds. Then Captain Veltarix's voice boomed across the forest, amplified by speakers. "Human, I know you can hear me. Tell me how you did it. How did one observer destroy everything?" Taimin didn't answer. He was too busy trying to reload his weapon with shaking hands. His body was at its limit. 7 days of running, fighting, and surviving had pushed him to the edge of collapse. "Answer me!" Veltarix roared. "You were nothing! An observer! How did you predict us? How did you know?" The Vren captain appeared between the trees, his weapon raised. Other soldiers flanked him on both sides. Taimin was surrounded. "I watched. Timon said simply. I learned. I understood. That's what humans do. Veltarix moved closer, his alien face twisted in anger. Impossible. You had no special technology, no advanced intelligence. You were alone. That's why it worked, Taemin replied. He was stalling now, hoping the coalition forces would arrive in time. I didn't have analysts or computers telling me what to think. I just watched you and tried to understand you. Turns out you're pretty predictable. The insult hit its mark. Veltarix raised his weapon, fury in his eyes. That's when the coalition dropships arrived. They came in fast and loud, weapons blazing. The Vren soldiers scattered as energy beams tore through the forest. Taemin threw himself flat as the world exploded into light and sound. Coalition Marines hit the ground running, their weapons trained on the Vren forces. The brief firefight ended quickly. The Vren, already demoralized by their fleet's destruction, surrendered. Commander Park was on one of the dropships. He found Taemin sitting against a tree, bleeding from a dozen cuts, exhausted but alive. You look terrible, Specialist, Park said with a small smile. I survived, sir. That's what matters. That you did. And you gave us the intelligence victory of the decade. Come on, let's get you to medical. 2 weeks later, Taemin found himself in a coalition medical facility, recovering from his injuries. His room had a real window with a view of space. After months underground and days on the run, seeing the stars felt incredible. Yoon Da-eun visited him regularly, asking questions about his methods. She wanted to understand how he made his predictions. I don't have a special formula, Taemin told her during one visit. I just pay attention to details. I think about why people do things, not just what they do. You look at data points. I look at stories. Stories? Everything has a cause and effect, motivations, patterns. When I watched the Vren fleets, I didn't just track their positions. I thought about why they were there, what they were trying to accomplish, what their commanders might be thinking. Da-eun nodded, taking notes. Other species analyze tactics like mathematical problems. Humans see them as narratives. I guess so. I never thought about it that way. I was just doing what felt natural. The debriefing sessions went on for days. Coalition Command wanted to understand everything. Taemin's observations of Vren ground tactics had already changed Coalition combat doctrine. His methods were being studied by military analysts across the Alliance. But the bigger change was in how the Coalition viewed humans. 3 weeks after his rescue, Taemin received orders to report to Coalition headquarters. He was still recovering, walking with a slight limp, but he could travel. The headquarters building was massive, a space station where representatives from dozens of species worked together. Taemin had never been here before. As an observer, he was too low-ranking for this place. Commander Park met him at the docking bay. Ready for this? Ready for what, sir? You're meeting the Coalition Security Council. They want to hear from you directly. The council chamber was intimidating. Representatives from every major coalition species sat in a semicircle, their attention focused on Taemin as he entered. The council leader, a tall alien with blue skin, spoke first. Specialist Kim Taemin, your actions have given us much to consider. One human observer working alone provided intelligence that changed the course of a military engagement. This has raised important questions about how we utilize human personnel. Taemin stood straight, despite his injuries. I was just doing my job, ma'am. You did far more than your job. You demonstrated a capability we did not know humans possessed. The ability to predict enemy behavior with extraordinary accuracy. Another council member spoke up. We have reviewed the reports. Your success rate was 94%. Our best intelligence analysts achieve 60% at most. How is this possible? Taemin took a breath. I think it's because humans don't just process information. We try to understand it. We look for meaning, for connections, for stories. When I watched the Vren, I wasn't calculating probabilities. I was trying to understand them as people, what they wanted, why they made certain choices. That made their next moves easier to predict. The council members exchanged looks. One of them, a species that resembled earth insects, clicked its mandibles thoughtfully. This cognitive difference could be significant. We may have been underutilizing human observers. The council leader nodded. We agree. Effective immediately, the coalition will be integrating human analysts and observers into every intelligence division. We need your unique perspective throughout our operations. Park stepped forward. With respect, Council, Specialist Kim should lead this initiative. He pioneered these methods. He should teach others. The Council discussed this briefly, then agreed. Taemin was promoted to senior analyst and assigned to develop training programs for human observers. As he left the council chamber, Taemin felt overwhelmed. He had gone from a lonely observer on a frozen world to someone who changed coalition intelligence operations. 6 months later, Taemin stood in a classroom at the Coalition Military Academy. In front of him sat 15 new recruits, all humans selected for observer training. Among them were Lee Hyun-woo, Kang Soo-jin, and Han Ji-woo. Being an observer isn't just about watching, Taemin told them. It's about understanding. Anyone can record data. Your job is to figure out what it means, to predict what comes next. One of the students raised their hand. How do we do that? You think like a human. You look for patterns, motivations, causes, and effects. You build a story in your mind about what the enemy is trying to accomplish. Then you predict the next chapter. Over the following months, Taemin's methods spread throughout the coalition intelligence community. Human observers became the most valued analysts in the alliance. Enemy forces learned to fear them, knowing that humans could predict their moves with disturbing accuracy. The Vren Empire, in particular, changed their entire military doctrine. They issued new protocols to all commanders. Human observers are not passive threats. They predict. They adapt. They understand us better than we understand ourselves. Find them. Eliminate them. But never, ever underestimate them. One evening, Taemin received a message from Commander Park. The coalition had captured Captain Veltarix after the battle on Threshold 7. The Vren officer had requested to speak with Taemin. Taemin agreed to the meeting. They met in a secure facility, separated by transparent barriers. Veltarix looked defeated, his military bearing gone. I had to know, the Vren said quietly. How did you do it? My entire career I followed proper doctrine. I made no obvious mistakes. Yet you destroyed my fleet and my reputation. Taemin considered his answer carefully. You didn't do anything wrong, Captain. You're a good officer. But you were predictable. You followed your training exactly. That made it easy to predict what you would do next. And humans are not predictable? We can be. But we also improvise. We break rules. We do unexpected things. And most importantly, we try to understand our opponents as people, not just as enemies. Veltarix was silent for a long moment. Then humans are more dangerous than we believed. We thought you were weak because you were not strong. We thought you were insignificant because you were new to the stars. We were wrong. You were, Taemin agreed. We're not stronger or faster, but we watch, we learn, we understand, and that makes us dangerous. Taemin left the facility and returned to his quarters. He stood at the window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human observers were watching, learning, predicting. They were changing the war, one observation at a time. He had been supposed to watch, just watch. But humans, he had learned, could never just watch. They had to understand. And understanding, it turned out, was the most powerful weapon of all.